Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Shoot the Shit, the podcast where I interview men because I want men to talk. Today I'm joined in person by Dominic, Howe. We did try and do this via the split screen, so it didn't work. The internet was being crap, so we're just going to do it in person. Hello, thank you for coming.
Hi Lewis, again.
Thanks for doing this again. Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. We were about 10 minutes into it, but we're gonna carry on. We're gonna start again. So, Dom, in your own words, what makes you a man?
I think for me it would involve the capacity to be creative, to create things, to be of use to people or something, to be of use. And to have a meaningful impact.
Great. I mean,
think, yeah,
very succinct. Nice.
Yeah.
So, how have you sort of come to that decision? How have you sort of decided those are your sort of key points in life? What's got you there?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Coming from Stoke-on-Trent, where masculinity, I guess in the 80s and 90s might be different to what we might discuss now, right? From a Midlands or North Midlands town. I think just through my own journey through school, college, academia, realising that for me personally I was quite creative, and that was something that I thought I might be able to be good at some point, and find an avenue in to be of use, and to create some meaningful thing. I struggle with the idea of that quite a lot, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough question, and it's one that I want to ask everyone, because it's something that is very important. I think a lot of people think about it, a lot of people take their time over it, and that again is also has its own issues, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to sort of shape it and see what it is what people are saying. But yeah, it's for me, as I'm sort of going on this journey myself, I agree with you. This purpose-driven side of things is what I'm striving for, and I think is important. So let's sort of, I always like to rewind because that's always fun. So let's start about Little Dom. Let's sort of talk
Little
about
Dom.
Little Dom.
Little Dom
in Little Stoke.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what that was like.
That was pretty cool, actually. I had an amazing upbringing. I was very lucky. Only child, completely spoiled.
You can't tell.
Yeah. Catholic upbringing, so I went to Catholic schools in Stoke. I went to St Teresa's at Trent Vale, which is not far from here. And well, I really struggled. So my mum was called in when I was quite young, and they wanted to send me to a special school for kids with learning difficulties, because they thought I had special needs, and they were actually making me write with my right hand, and the teacher could only mark my homework in a mirror.
Right.
And she argued that they should maybe let me use my left hand, and which I did. But by then I was struggling. I was always struggling at school with remembering the times tables and learning by rote. So I was always just daydreaming. And I wasn't, because of that, I wasn't allowed to do French, art or music. So probably the three subjects at school that I might have been good at were prohibited because they thought I was special needs. So yeah, that was quite a slow start, but I managed to catch up. And fortunately, it's quite a weird one. It would never happen in schools nowadays, but our primary school teacher in one particular year went to a conference for a week and asked her husband to stand in. So her husband came in and took the class, and he was an architect.
Right, okay.
And he gave us homework for the week, and that was the only time I ever got like a gold star. So from then, I kind of had an idea of what I might do. Unfortunately, at the moment, that panned out.
Nice. Well, that's a nice little caveat. My granddad was he had his left hand tied behind his back as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, he was. He went to a pretty strict like Victorian school, back end of the Victorian era.
Yeah.
So he
horrendous.
So
I think I was on the back end of that. Obviously, he changed quite rapidly after. By the time I was at college, to the point now where there are architecture practices that predominantly employ left-handed people because they're more likely to probably be dyslexic as well.
Yeah.
ADHD, and then you're surrounded by a support team. You've got all these support staff in these large firms in London, and it kind of works. But,
nice.
Yeah.
So, other than that, school pretty good, friends, etc. Nothing to scream home about.
Yeah, it was all right. But a lot of bullying, I think, because I was extremely tall.
Nice.
I was probably the tallest in my year by about a foot. So
Little Dom was the wrong description.
Yeah. So that was difficult, but I think it was character building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then straight to Stoke-on-Trent College to do construction management and surveying, because that was supposed to be a surefire route into architecture.
So how old were you when when that guy came in, the substitute teacher that wasn't a teacher?
I think about 7.
Wow, so really sort of just stuck with you through the sort of whole school system.
Yeah, it was really cool. That would never happen now.
No, you might get a guest speaker in, but nothing.
No, it was wild.
Nothing that extreme. So you stuck to your guns all the way through that, and that was sort of the decision going into college. So I guess
not really. I had
that was
just very quick. There's been some really weird sort of synchronicities regarding architecture, and so I knew I wanted to do it. My careers teacher said go to Stoke College, which was then Cullen College, and do construction and surveying management, which I did. And then when I went to fill out the UCAS form, there wasn't a single school of architecture that was taking BTEC students. They only wanted A-level students.
Right, okay.
So I was horrified, and I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to do architecture now. The only thing I could think of that was remotely interesting was hydrography, which is surveying the ocean and the ocean bed. And I picked the furthest university away from Stoke, which was Plymouth, and I did about a week of it, and I thought I was just going to have to quit. I hated it, and I bumped into a girl who was our hall's warden, and she was a 4th year architecture student, and we went for some beers, and the next day she got me an interview with at the School of Architecture, and I was in.
Nice.
So it was so weird.
Went to uni to do something else. And switched over.
Yeah, and ended up getting into it. I remember calling my mum and asking if it was all right to change from a 3-year to a 7-year degree. But yeah, thanks, Mum. That was really cool.
Nice. Well, I was just sort of going to touch on, because, I mean, maybe more now, maybe more then. I think it was very sort of, maybe now is probably a little bit more, no longer linear, but you were given sort of 2 options, I guess, once you sort of reached 16.
Yeah.
It was carry on or go and work. Was there any sort of societal pressures at that stage that you were like, maybe I'll go and work somewhere, or was it just them?
I wanted to do carpentry at one point. So my parents built an extension, and they built it themselves, and they had a couple of carpenters come in and build some bay windows, and it was fascinating. I mean, and I do carpentry now, right?
Yeah.
Throughout my sort of career, I've gone off and done timber framing and things as an enthusiast, but that was kind of frowned upon. It was like, no, you should go to college. I was the first person in my family, like a lot of people around here, were the first people in their family to get the opportunity to go to university. They very much wanted me to get a profession, if I could. The irony being that once you have a profession, you fantasize about doing something with your hands, which I've been thinking about a lot since watching one of your podcasts where you asked that question. I think it's to your mate who's in the Navy.
Yeah.
What is a man? And it made me think about that a lot, and some of the books that I've been reading, which are all about professionals struggling to come to terms with what they do and leaving and going into manual work, using their hands.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because that was the definition. Someone who had oil on their hands or some sort of splinter. I've been ridiculed for having nice hands from my friends who are all like work in the automobile trade.
Calluses are good.
Yeah, well, I took up rowing so I could get some calluses.
That'll work.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty plain sailing, sort of like as a generic childhood in that sense. There wasn't any crazy struggles in that side of things. It was just
the
standard bullying.
Yeah, just the standard bullying, which was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. But I think by the time I'd gone off to uni, I'd kind of filled out a little bit and become more comfortable
being
in myself. And when I came home, it was completely different.
Yeah.
And sort a few of them out, which I probably shouldn't have done. But that's in the past. Yeah, no, it was fine. It was a really good childhood. I had my grandparents until I was, quite old, late 30s, early 40s. So I was really lucky to have amazing grandparents. And considering some of my friends' backgrounds, I'm like, I won the lottery, really.
Yeah, no, nice. It's good to have those influences. So Plymouth, uni pressures. Any feeling anything there other than the switch of course? Just
no, I think
away from home, furthest away, big decision.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, and I often wish I could be back in the sort of late 90s period, pre-email, pre-mobile phone. An amazing time, but I did struggle. I think I really struggled with the artistic side of university and the School of Architecture, the poetic side. We had this sort of scale, poet and plumber they used to use, and they would sort of grade your presentations of your work on the scale of poetry and plumbing. And I always found it difficult with the poetic side. I think probably coming from Stoke-on-Trent and my sort of background and my friends that I'd had at the time, that it felt feminine or weak to go into talking in a poetic way about stuff. That took quite a while, but other than that, it was amazing.
Yeah, nice. That's interesting, because I'm a very analytical guy. I'm very like, this is this is that. So I get that. I think I would have struggled with that too. Nothing with it being masculine or feminine, just purely that's how my brain works. So, get your degree.
Mm-hmm. I got that.
Happy with the result?
No. Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
I was happy because I felt sort of vindicated.
You've done it.
But I felt happy because it was a low score, which was kind of an up yours to the very traditional and old-fashioned tutors there. So I came away with quite a low degree, I got a 2-2, which was kind of intentional, or a byproduct of how I conducted myself there, which was very sort of rebellious, which came from reading some rebellious sort of architects and following some really rebellious conceptual architects or paper architects at the time, and it didn't fit the programme of the school.
Okay. So they were behind the times.
Yeah.
I got a 2-2 as well, so don't worry.
I think it's good. I think it's fine.
All the best people do.
Yeah, for sure.
What was next then? Was there any sort of pressures?
I think that's where the entrepreneurial sort of vibe comes in. I knew I wanted to go to London because I was obsessed with a school of architecture called the Bartlett, which was really hot at the time for like super conceptual work. I think it was the Bartlett and UCLA, California, that were the two sort of hottest schools of architecture. Never thought I would get in, so I didn't apply. Had to do a year out. Never occurred to me that I could. A lot of things never occurred to me. Right? So, never occurred to me that I could go to London and do a year out with a famous really cool practice. So I just moved back to Stoke, moved back in with my parents, and started looking for year out positions, and I got a job with Horsley Huber and Associates in Stafford, which was really old fashioned. Great guys, but he was like super old fashioned, and I did that for like 6 months, and I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And at the time, 3D graphics was just coming out, and I got the first release, hacked release of 3D Studio before it was 3D Studio Max. And off the back of that, figured out that I could model buildings, which wasn't really being done, particularly in the UK, anyway, outside of London. And I thought, I wonder if I could do this for money. So I set up a visualization company with a really shit name. It's called Digital Skin.
It's not shit, is it?
And we were called Digital Skin Virtual Architects. And so I moved back to Plymouth.
Nice.
And I was there for 3 years, and I ran that for that duration. And I actually did make money. I made a living. I had to ask my mum and dad a few times, like, I've screwed up with my cash flow, chasing invoices and stuff, so they kind of bailed me out, which was nice.
So the moving back to Stoke, that must have been, was that, you just, like you said, you just didn't have any foresight, or was it?
No, I don't think it occurred to me. I didn't have a plan. I never had a plan.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any SMART goals. I didn't realise at the time that I could have got 100, coming out of Plymouth, the banks were giving 100% graduate mortgages.
Right.
So, no deposit. I didn't even know. It never occurred to me that I could move to London, get a 100% graduate mortgage for a flat, go and work in some amazing practice like Richard Rogers.
Yeah.
I just fucking moved home.
So 6 months and then you hated it. Was that like a build-up, or was it like, was it a combination of where you were working? Was it a combination of being back at home? Like for me, I've come home maybe once or twice. This is my third time back, and you get itchy feet, I guess, is one thing.
Yeah.
But then the other one for me is like, we'll probably talk about this a bit more, but the other one is sort of a fear of stepping back and sort of reaching. I like to say keeping up with the Joneses, but like, you know what I mean, just sort of slotting back into a small society.
Coming back home, it kind of feels like failure as well. Yeah. Because it is a massive world out there, and I'm sure we've both seen a lot of it, and it is amazing. Yeah, it's hard moving back, but at the time that never occurred to me that moving to London might be a thing. Yeah. And I'd actually moved back during my degree. It might be relevant to the podcast. I had a mental breakdown in my third year. So before I left Stoke, I used to experiment with a lot of psychoactive drugs, as a lot of people do. So mushrooms, LSD, and so I thought I was quite experienced with that sort of stuff, and nobody in my university house had. So we organised this thing, and I had my first really bad trip, and it led to about 3 months of extreme psychosis, to the point where I couldn't trust myself to be in the room on my own.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I moved home, and I set my huge A0 drawing board next to the TV in my parents' living room, and did all of my drawings in their living room, because I couldn't be on my own, because I would have killed myself. And I did. It was so weird. So I think it's probably a safe place to return to, and I think the idea of London, it was related to rejection, the fear of rejection, probably, that I don't think I'd have been able to have handled getting a rejection from Richard Rogers. Yeah, they would have. Which was completely stupid, because with hindsight, it would have been easy for me to get in. Yeah. Safe place to come back to. Yeah, there's that safety net always. Well, especially when it's such a for yourself, it's a welcome place to come back. It's not. It wouldn't be difficult for you to come back.
So that obviously is extremely relevant to the to the podcast.
And it was a really weird thing. Like, I didn't want to die. I became obsessed with the idea of death and mortality. I think it's the first time I'd ever considered being mortal from this bad trip, and it's all I could think about. And I just wanted to know when it was going to be.
Yeah.
So I went to see my doctor in Plymouth, and he's like, "Oh, you could be knocked over by a bus coming out of here." And I'm like, "Yeah, that would be fine if I knew it was going to happen." And the idea of not knowing when it would happen was so difficult to deal with that I thought if I took control of that by killing myself, then I would be in control of that, and I didn't want to do that. So I moved home. And I can imagine my parents thinking, "What the
did you tell
is
them?
wrong with him?" I think maybe a little bit, because I think they sent me to talk to their because I wasn't Catholic by then, but they sent me to talk to the priest and all that stuff. And the doctor tried to prescribe medication, and I was like, no thanks. And then I dealt with it for a few more months, and then I woke up one day and it had gone.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
And it's never returned.
It's never returned.
Yeah. So weird. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I've obviously wrote that article on my sort of suicidal thoughts, I guess, is probably I didn't try and kill myself, but living on the 10th floor of a flat.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, partner at the time left for the weekend, and I had to go and lock the balcony door key in the post box because I was concerned that during the night, in my slumbered sleep, I was just gonna.
Yeah, it's a split-second decision. You don't want to do it, but you don't trust yourself that you won't.
So I thought the ping of the lift of me trying to go down there sleepwalking would have at least woken me up and taken it out of me. So
Right.
yeah, that was a tough, and it took me probably about 3-4 months to get back on that balcony.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well done.
So that was an interesting time. But yeah.
Do you think that makes you stronger, having gone through that?
I don't. I think I wrote in the article that whatever gets you there is irrelevant, because everyone has their own sort of levels, I guess, of what can sort of drive them to those sort of thoughts. Like, it could be very easy to get you there, or it could be very hard to get you there. I think it's different for everyone. But I think if I hadn't have done what I'm doing now, probably not. No, I think it probably would have only got worse. I think the fact that I'm taking an active look at not being sad, because that's not ever going to happen. We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's that, like you say, that strength or that bounce back is really important. And I don't, similar to you, touching the wood. I don't see me ever getting back there, because like it wasn't an attempt of suicide, and it was just a thought, and it wasn't the thought of I'm going to do this. It was a thought, and then I was like, I don't want to do that, which is obviously counter thoughts. So for me, it was more a case of I don't think I'll ever have that devil on the shoulder, shall we say? It's probably the two voices. So yes, but not just that experience alone. I don't think is what's got me there.
Okay.
Has made me stronger. I think it's more understanding, just going on a personal journey as well, and trying to better myself has put me in a stronger position. So and then how about you then? So you're back home, you've moved back to Plymouth, business, straight out of uni.
Yeah, I know, and that was weird.
Big moves.
Weird, especially with like a sort of ADHD vibe. It was really difficult for me to focus.
Yeah.
So I'd spend a lot of time pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines and posting. I had a massive printer, and I would print these visualizations off and put them through the architect's letterbox at like 5 a.m. It was wild. But Yeah, it was good. It was really good. But in the background, it was always, what am I doing? I could build this into I could do this.
Just to explain to people, you're not a full architect at this point.
No, so architecture takes 7 years. You do an undergrad, 3 years, a year out in industry, 2 years back in, which is a diploma, which is called RIBA Part 2, another year out, and then RIBA Part 3, which is all the legal exams. And so I'd got Part 1, which was just the degree. So I was on my year out, hadn't enjoyed it. I probably didn't make the most of it as well. Looking back, could have put a lot more effort in because they were good guys. But it just wasn't for me. So I ended up running this small visualization company. It grew to 3 people. At the end, we just started doing some animations for offshore wind farms.
Nice.
Which was pretty cool. But at the background was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be trying to become an architect, and I knew I wanted to go to the Bartlett. That was my dream at the time. Hadn't applied, kept deferring it because I didn't think I'd be able to cope if I didn't get a place, and then applied in the fourth year of my fourth year out from the degree. I applied and got in.
Nice.
Which was amazing. So I didn't have to go through those suicidal thoughts again. But no, it was amazing that I got in.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
So, shut up shop or just...
Yeah, shut up shop. I thought, stupidly, I probably could have, if I was more organised, I could have done it in London.
Yeah.
And paid my way. I think... my parents kind of bailed me out and paid my rent in London, and which I feel, and that makes me feel like an asshole in a way, because I've got friends and previous girlfriends who didn't have that, and they worked several jobs to get through university, and I think they probably appreciated it a bit more, but I could have run that business at the same time. And there were visualization companies in London that were formed round about that time, like Cityscape, that are huge, multi million pound companies. But I folded it. And my colleagues, they're now working in film in London at a moving picture company.
Nice. So they did all right.
They did all right.
Yeah. It's. I'm going to use the word privilege because it is a privilege. Yeah. It's so hard to decide what to take and what not to take, and I think I've got friends that are extremely privileged, and aren't sorry for that fact. And I think if it's there as an opportunity, I think it should be taken. I don't think there's no need to add extra pressures to yourself just
for sure
to fit in, and it's okay to appreciate other people's positions.
I think for my parents, they just thought it was amazing that I could go from we want to send him to a special school to oh wow, he can become an architect kind of thing, and and then you become an architect and you think, oh
I'm now an architect.
Yeah, I'm now an architect, and this is what it's like. So,
well, it's really funny because architecture is seen as a high achieving, great profession. Yeah. Congratulations! Hi, I'm so and so. I'm an architect.
Yeah.
Has a certain gravitas to it. Yeah, there's obviously a truth to every profession, I guess.
Indeed, and in fact, my partner today, she asked me for a recommendation on schools because one of her friends' daughters is off to school, and I was like, never mind what school, I think you should look at a different profession. You know, and in fact with the AI and stuff, it won't exist anyway by the time somebody starts now, 7 years time.
Yeah.
The landscape would be so different, but that's a separate conversation. But yeah, it's an interesting profession in that you've got 7 years of fantasy of designing.
Yeah.
And it's very indulgent, or it's very privileged, and you build this sort of vision or imagination of what it's going to be like when you go out into the real world, and then you get into the real world and you draw in toilets till 2 o'clock in the morning for years, and doing door schedules, or horrendously boring stuff, and there's no design. And I know people who are in their 50s and you've still not got to design anything there. You get pigeonholed at certain things. And I was always extremely lucky. Like in my time in London, I got really lucky in the right teams, in the right sort of areas. So I worked in facades and structures. So I got to do like the nice stuff. But some of my colleagues were doing like drawing corridors or drawing toilets or basements for 6 months at a time.
Yeah, that's literally the polar opposite of the degree.
Yeah,
I guess.
And long hours.
Yeah. Well, London itself is just long.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure.
So, from a little Stokey to the big smoke, streets paved with gold, which they were when you went.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they've changed them since.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was your work-life balance like in that sense? How did you find that?
My work-life balance was screwed. I think if you're in one of the top firms, or one of a signature firm, the work ethos or culture is different. So outside the M25 or in smaller firms, everyone leaves at 5, maybe 6 o'clock, and in the big ones, it's nothing to go to midnight.
Yeah.
In fact, generally we'd go for dinner at a local Italian, and then at about 9, and then go back in for 2 o'clock, get an Addison Lee home pre-Uber, before Uber, and be back in at 8 o'clock, and do it for weeks and months on end, and get ill.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
I imagine going for the jibbing for going for lunch early and stuff like that, or not even attempting to do it.
The gym. I didn't go to the gym once.
Sorry. The jib. Sorry.
The jib.
Going to lunch a little bit early is always amusing in those situations.
Yeah. Little things like it would be really weird if you left on time on one particular day, like if it was 6 o'clock. And you had something you had to do, like a social engagement, and you would get up and say, "Oh, I'm leaving now, guys. Like, see you tomorrow," and everybody would be like, you'd feel weird, like shutting your computer down and leaving. It's such a weird thing.
Part timer.
I got better at that towards the end.
Yeah.
The last few years.
It's interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's places still like that, which is pretty insane.
And everybody's like, I think everybody's depressed in those situations and are doing weird things.
Yeah.
Like I started collecting stuff, and there were a few architects that I knew that would just collect stuff because it felt like we were a creative act. Because we were starved creatively, we would collect stuff. So I started collecting guitars, and then when I ran out of room in the flat, I started collecting components of guitars, like ultra rare pickups and pedals and things, and motorbikes. And then I had a friend that was collecting motorbikes, and it's just because you feel starved creatively, that feels like a
nice outlet.
Yeah, so weird.
I mean, fair enough. So you did that for how long? How long were you?
Until 20. So I quit once.
Yeah.
I quit a few times and then went back. So when the Lehman Brothers crash happened,
Yeah.
they offered voluntary redundancies.
Yeah.
I took it, and they didn't want me to go, but I was like, well, shit, I've asked now. That's a dangerous position. So I took a bit, for me at the time that was a big sum of money. Went to America, bought a Harley, rode across America, went to a timber framing school to do traditional timber frame barn building, and then came back and went back to the same place.
Nice. A bit like I've had
just dropped back in.
Yeah, a bit like I've had in my notice in, and then they just go, yeah, all right, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, and then so I was away for about a year, and then went back, and then finally quit. Yeah, I think 2017. Set up on my own.
This still in London.
Yeah, so there was an RIBA incubator. That's the Royal Institute of British Architects. They had their own incubator in the back of the headquarters, near the BBC, and it was 300 quid a month for a desk.
Right.
And you could be in there for 2 years. So I moved straight in there and got a couple of small projects, and kicked it off from there.
What made you make that plunge? Sick of joining?
I think I'd been very lucky up to that point, working with certain partners within the firm. And within the firm that I was working in, there were a couple of partners that I thought were really good designers, and they did really good work. And there were ones that it was kind of questionable, and I really wouldn't have enjoyed being in those. And so I was quite lucky, and I did some quite interesting projects with some great people and learned a tremendous amount. And then I was promoted to project architect, which is somebody who runs a team and delivers the building all the way through to completion and handover to the client. And got to a point where I felt like I was drowning. Or every day it was just like, it was like, I would get in super early to try and get some emails done before the team got in, and then everybody in the team wants to talk to you. You've got to try and talk to everybody before the first meeting, and then before you know it, it's like 9 o'clock, and then you do it again. And I think 3 months of that, I hadn't done a single drawing, and I was just like, I'm done with that. And they didn't. So I spoke to the partner and that I worked under, and he didn't think it would be it wouldn't be feasible for me to move back to being a facades architect, because it would be a retrograde sort of career move. They wanted me to stay and be groomed, I guess, into a management role or partner or something like that, which a couple of my colleagues have done. So I was like, fuck it, I'm setting up on my own without any business knowledge. Left all of that lovely sort of support staff that was there. There were so many amazing different departments of support staff. Yeah. And there's none of that. I knew nothing about business.
Other than your business that was quite successful in Plymouth.
The visualisation one. Yeah. But I made all the classic mistakes. But so that's what I did.
Nice. Yeah. So doing all that, setting up on your own, how did you feel, sort of pressure-wise? Anything extra, or was it a bit of a relief to leave?
It was a massive relief. I think there's a bit of FOMO there. Yeah. In that it would have been quite, because I got on with everybody. It was like it was like a family, right? And I'd lost both my parents a year apart whilst I worked at that office. They gave me loads of time off whilst they were sick and time after to get my stuff together. So they were really cool, and it was like a close family. But so I could have probably made partner and then maybe bought equity and done that thing and quite easily sail through to retirement. And that would have been really nice for in another life. So I think you're always struggling with, oh man, what if? And I've gone from doing these, like working on £50 million prestigious projects in the city to like small extensions, rear extensions on properties and stuff, and thinking, oh God. And I remember getting the tube. I went to see a potential client for a project that I didn't want to do. right out on the end of the Northern Line at the end of the day, like 9 o'clock at night or something, to meet this person. They didn't have the budget to do it. I didn't want to do it. Turns out I was being interviewed. They were interviewing several architects for this little extension. And then walking back and thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? And getting the tube back into central London. And I thought, I'm going to Google what was Norman Foster doing when he was my age. And he was building like the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. And thinking, oh man, what have I done? Yeah, you just got to keep going at that point.
We're in now.
Yeah, and I had a couple of little projects, and I had a tremendous sort of relationship with some other guys that were doing the same thing in this incubator. It was like an open space. We all had a dedicated desk.
Yeah.
And within that group, there was 4 or 5 of us that are still in touch together on WhatsApp. So that was amazing.
Nice, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you tried to find that comparison. Something that I'm really trying to work on. So I've got friends, married, kids, dogs, detached properties, picket fence.
All that good stuff.
Apparently good stuff, yeah. I'm recently single. Well, it's getting on a bit now, actually. Getting closer to less.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not over the hump. I won't say that. That's wrong. In my 30s, change of career again. It's very easy to make comparisons, right? And say, shit, if I'd have stayed in finance, I'd probably be retiring in the next couple of years, is the honest truth.
Yeah.
At the trajectory I was going at. So, yeah, it's.
I can relate to that.
It's a funny old world, but yeah, that's something that I'm really trying to work on, and I want to encourage people to. Not do. Comparison's the thief of joy, as they say. So.
Very much so, and I'm extremely guilty of it.
Yeah, it's not easy to not do.
No, it's really difficult, and my partner Claire, she's always pulling me up on that.
So is it something that you still do now? That's what was going to be my question. It's still what ifs and ifs, buts and maybes.
Exactly, and I look back now because I feel like at my current age, 48, it feels like last chance saloon in a way, because I've had all these sort of. They feel like full starts.
Yeah.
Visualization company or whatever, organic juice bar in North Wales, and then going back to London, and so all these different full starts, and it's like, oh man, what was I doing? If only I'd, if only there'd been Tom Bilyeu and all these different self-help podcasts when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But whatever. You are where you are, aren't you? And
you are. I've never been into I guess spirituality is one of the keyest words, but like I do believe what has been is what's meant to have been type thing. You learn a lot of lessons. As long as you're learning lessons.
It's all lessons, right?
Yeah.
It's all lessons and wisdom and confidence and
I try not to look back at what was and like live in that world. I'd rather look back at that and say, why was that good, or how was that bad, or what could I have done differently there, and what did I learn from it, rather than I wish I was still.
I think that's key, is what could you have done differently so you can.
And why didn't you do certain things and those sort of things. So that's my view on it anyway. Are you just constantly just getting pulled up from Claire, or is it something that you're trying to work on as well?
No, I am trying to work on it, and she calls it the comparison game. I always do it, and it's sort of like with my closest friends. Yeah. So it's not a jealousy thing, because I'm sort of elated that some friends are doing well at this or well at that, or they're off in Australia and building skyscrapers and collections of motorbikes, whatever. I think it's amazing, and I'm super happy, but then I'm thinking, what the fuck have I done wrong? Like, what, how what, there's a reason why I haven't got it, and that's what I'm working on now. Is what are those decisions that led me to not be doing those things, and people, you know, I've got friends that talk to me about what I'm doing now, which feels extremely difficult, and they're like, oh wow, it's amazing, I wish I could be doing this masters in, you know, entrepreneurship or whatever, and trying to build an environmental thing, a startup, or so. Yeah, the grass is always greener, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
but
the irony.
it's
right?
really hard because it would be so easy to go back and plug yourself in, you know, take the blue pill or whatever, and plug back into that nice paycheck.
Yeah.
It would be really easy. But you just got to remember, you have to remember why.
Yeah.
You know, why you quit. I don't know.
Fair enough. So let's go back to the story, I guess.
Yeah.
So you were working for yourself, and then so what brought you back to Stoke? I guess is
Yeah.
the
Okay.
stages.
So I'd been. So my dad passed away in 2012 with cancer, and then my nan went a few months after that, and then a few months after that my mum got ill with cancer. So it was just this like, it was just like being waterboarded. So the house was left, I just locked their house in Stoke, and I just left it. And I drank a bottle of red wine every night in the bath, binge watching Prison Break. I did that for like a year or something. And thanks to Claire that she let me go through that, right? And I think she was really understanding. But so it took me a while to like process everything and get on top of stuff. And then,
can I just on that, because grief in men is something that I've witnessed and I've had friends ask me about from sort of older people and that sort of thing. What do you think happens to a man when they lose those upper generations, I guess? Like what?
Yeah, I think that's a real sort of key one for me. I think knowing, because you mentioned the privilege thing, right? I was an only child, and anything that they could have done for me, they did. And when I messed up, they bailed me out. Yeah, quite a few times. And even though I was then in a position where I was fully qualified, chartered architect, nice fat salary, they were still there. So you kind of think, well, in the back of your mind, that safety net's still there, right? Yeah. Because they're your best friends and they're there. And when they're not there, like when my dad died, I was like, well, there's my mum, and I'm going to be taking care of my mum, and you know, whatever, maybe I'll move back, or we'll all move to France or something at some point. When she went, that was weird, because it was the first time that I'd ever felt alone in the world without a safety net. Yeah. So it was feeling completely alone, even though I'd got Claire. Yeah. And we'd been together for a few years, and she's my life partner. But I felt completely alone, and also that safety net was there. Yeah. And that was really weird.
Yeah, I think that for me is, I've been trying, like, you look at it, and I look at people that I know of sort of late 40s, early 50s, maybe even late 50s as well, sort of losing their parents, and then either having children or not having children is like, usually when you're at that age, those said children will be at a certain age, and they've probably got their own lives, and I think it's what you alluded to right at the beginning, which is that purpose. It's like, it's sort of gone then. Like you said, you actually said it, like, oh, I can look after my mum. Like almost that was your purpose, and then
absolutely
it had gone to an extent. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on it because it's such an interesting topic, and I think it's probably one of the least looked at.
It's difficult. It's really difficult, especially like later when you evolve again and because I would like call my mum as soon as I got out of the office and just talk to them. Right?
Yeah.
And when now they're not there, and now I'm doing different things. And so my mum was like an amazing gardener, and she had like an acre and a half in France. She created this forest garden, and I never really paid attention to all that knowledge that she was passing on about how to do certain horticultural things. And I'd be like, oh right, yeah. And now I'm really into horticulture and forest gardening, and I can't. And she's gone, and she doesn't know that I'm doing this amazing thing. I think that's quite hard.
Yeah.
To not be able to, for them to see that.
Yeah, you always want advice off your mum, right? That's
for sure.
One of those things.
For sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I can see. But I think for me, I think that's probably one of the most, in this whole spectrum of everything, I think that's probably one of the most misunderstood and missed opportunities or missed sections of men's mental health, is this pure this grief stage which most men will go through at some point.
Claire wanted me to go for grief counselling and cognitive behavioural therapy, and I refused. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. No way am I doing that.
Yeah.
So I just ended up boozing and working.
Yeah.
And that was how I got through it. I think it might have worked. Well, very weirdly, right? Because here I am in Stoke.
I wouldn't call it textbook, but yeah, whatever.
So it was like 20. So I was in the incubator for a couple of years.
Yeah.
2019, I was finally ready to come up here and start working on the house.
Right. Okay.
And emptying all of their stuff, and of which there was a lot. So I was going to empty the house, get rid of the house, and move back south and to Portugal. We had plans of moving to Portugal, Claire and myself. And then the pandemic hit. And I'd also just taken a studio at the Spode Works, which is just over the road from here, which is an abandoned ceramics factory in Stoke. And I took a studio there, thinking that I might be able to split my time between London and Stoke and jump on the train, hour and a half, and do some regeneration sort of stuff up here. And then the pandemic hit, and so I was really lucky that I'd still kept the bungalow because it was close to the woods, and that was an amazing thing. We just rode out the pandemic from there, going into the woods every day.
And then there was no drawback to London after that?
No. No. Claire tried to work here, and she found it difficult because of what she does, like her career. There isn't that much fashion work in Stoke, so it's either commuting to like Manchester or whatever. So she moved back to London, and I'm trying to make a go of it here. But my projects are in London, so I haven't done any projects in Stoke-on-Trent. All of my work's been in London. Yeah. Since setting up on my own. So I do get to go back, and whenever I get off the train in Euston, it's like I feel like I've come home. Yeah. But then I get the same thing when I get off the train in Stoke. Right? I'm like, oh God, thank God I'm back from London. Yeah. So it's weird. It is weird. It feels okay at the moment.
Yeah. Were you just first lockdown straight out of London, or was it?
I was already here,
and
so I'd been back in Stoke for a few months. Claire was working in London, and the pandemic, first lockdown happened. She was down there, so I just drove down, empty motorway, and empty streets, very weird, and brought her back, and we rode those couple of lockdowns in Stoke.
Nice.
which was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucked up, isn't it, in a way that for some people it was an amazing experience, and for some people it was horrendous. And for me, I was extremely lucky that I had that house, and it was on the edge of Trenton Woods, and I had work to do.
Weird time.
Very weird.
We were lucky. We had a strip of Astro in London. I've told this story.
So you were in London for yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've told this story countless times. My partner at the time, this is probably one of the potential reasons that we're not together anymore. I was like, this will last 2 weeks max. So yeah. And this is when everyone was panic buying, so I was like, oh, I know where there'll be food. Obviously had the office in Mayfair, so I was like, I'll go to Fortnum and Mason's. Empty. No one was raiding Fortnum and Mason's, so everyone who was looting, or not looting, but stocking up missed there. So yeah, I bought smoked salmon and some like really expensive cured bacon, and some really nice eggs, and then took them to her flat, which didn't have a garden, and she was like, what is this? Like, she'd been to like every supermarket and the freezer was full of stuff, and I was like, it'll be over in 2 weeks and we're going to have a nice breakfast tomorrow. So,
which you did.
Which we did. It was gorgeous food, but yeah, so we were there for quite a while, and then when they first, I think it was like 6 weeks, and that was hell, because there was like 6 of us living in a 3-bed apartment that was literally just the top of a house.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they let us move around a bit, we went back to my flat with my one other housemate. So there was me and his partner, and me and my partner at the time living in the flat. So that was a lot better. But that was just bigger. It was just a bigger flat. So yeah, that was that.
Wow.
So I didn't come till after pandemic. Like, we were sort of the back end of it, and then I came back to Stoke. I actually came for other reasons. It wasn't really a pandemic thing. It was more of a business dismantlement than a pandemic thing. But yeah, I'm now back in sunny Stoke.
Yeah,
as well.
Very,
very sunny today. Yeah, which, coming home, has its niceties, but also its failures, as you've said.
Yeah.
So that sort of touch of failure. So yeah. But for you, it sounds like it was more of a conscious decision to move here rather than
it was just, it was literally come back, empty the house, get the house, because I'd left it for quite a few years, so it needed, renovating, and put it on the market, moved to Portugal.
That was the plan.
That was the plan. It kind of still is the plan-ish.
Yeah.
But with some twists. And then after, stuck around. I was quite shocked by, like, the degradation, I would probably call it.
Yeah.
Of Stoke.
Decay.
Yeah, because I remember Stoke Town as it was quite a nice place, right? I used to meet my nan there. There was the Woolworths, and it was all right.
Yeah.
And now it's just horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And to see all of those, like, heritage buildings and public assets just crumbling away, being demolished, and it's kind of...
As an architect, it must hurt the soul a little.
Yeah, when you think that from where we are, because, being from the potteries, we had the capacity to produce some beautiful ceramic buildings up here, so it's tremendously rich. Like, if you walk through Burslem, it's mind-blowing, the quality of the buildings there, and crumbling away.
Yeah, real shame.
Sold off for £1 or 20 grand. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. So somewhere I thought, is there an opportunity to get involved in some sort of regeneration thing? So I went off and did conservation architect qualification. So I thought, at least with that, I would be able to converse with the council and from an idea of conservation understanding,
Yeah.
and that there would be some possibility of regeneration there, but it's just failed. That's failed to materialise
Yet.
yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Always say yet.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff bubbling on the surface, right? And as we found out on Tuesday, there's a lot of people with similar ideas. They're looking at different buildings across the 6 towns. So the ideas are bubbling. They always have been, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an execution phase is needed now. But again, that's a story for another day.
It is.
So just to touch on a little bit of a topic that is, I guess, interesting to some people in this sort of space. You and your partner, you spend long periods of time apart from each other.
We do at the moment.
Yeah. So how are you getting? What does that look like? What are your sort of things that you put in place? And there's obviously other pressures as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult. She works round the clock. She's like me. She's obsessed. She works in fashion and in design. So she works weekends, late evenings. So it's not as if she's finished at 5 and waiting or whatever. And she's got loads of interests as well and activities. So at the moment we speak every morning. We speak at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we see each other. We're supposed to see each other sort of every other weekend. Doesn't really pan out that way for whatever reasons, but and as long as there's an idea of we're doing this for a reason and there's a plan, and that plan is that relatively soon we can create a new base.
So you've got goals together, I guess. Yeah. Even though you're sort of
we've got the goals, and I'm signed up to a master's at the moment. And that finishes in December, and so we're looking at spring next year, establishing a base together.
Nice, cool. So it's just constant communication, and you still have a shared goal and vision together that's sort of keeping that tight.
And also a trust, right? We've been together for just over 10 years. And I think there's a trust.
Yeah,
I think that's important. That's really important as well.
I think the thing with trust is that's just you two as people. I think everything else is work, right? Like you're gonna have to, even if you didn't trust the person, the work could potentially get you to trust the person, so to speak, as well.
Yeah. I'm laughing now. I sometimes call her a telephone concept lady because we go through periods of time where I haven't seen her for so long that it becomes this imagined concept. It's just a voice on the phone after a month, or sometimes it's been a month or 6 weeks and we haven't seen each other, and we're both working round the clock, and it's just this abstract concept.
Okay. I can see why you're laughing. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, nice. So let's talk about what's sort of the next big vision, I guess, for you, and what's happening in your world right now.
Work,
life,
relation,
work, goals, visions.
Yeah, moving away from architectural practice.
Yeah.
So I'm winding that down. It will come back later in a different. If everything goes according to plan, it'll come back.
Yeah.
But under my own terms. Moving more into environmental work.
Yeah.
Which I think stems from a need to have an impact, or find a way to have a meaningful impact, and a fascination, a newfound fascination with nature and the environment. And to move into a space there of an environmental startup, which comes from a few different things. I've been studying for a permaculture design certificate, and also I've been studying agroforestry and agroecology, and I'm looking at ways in which I combine all of those things into a profitable business that has a benefit to the environment.
Yeah, nice.
And i.e. an impact.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm exploring at the moment.
So you, it's quite apparent from everything that you've said that you're always trying to further your career or your education or development, your personal development. Is that something you're aware of, or is it just what is happening?
I think it's a good one, because I wouldn't consider that as a personal development, because I don't work out or go to the gym or do yoga or anything physical. I'll kind of ignore that, which I obviously shouldn't do, and nutrition but anything to do with learning or what I feel passionate about gets 100% attention.
Yeah.
And
I'd call that personal development.
Yeah.
I'd call the other stuff health.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Is that have you always? Is that just something you've always done? Is just always looked at something and always been intrigued?
I think my mind is a bit like a butterfly. It flutters around for the latest thing that I might be interested in, and then I'll do that for a bit, and then I'll drop it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be a timber framer. I'm going to get into carpentry. I'm going to design motorcycles, and I go into these like wormholes for months till 3 o'clock in the morning, researching and learning, and then I dump it and go off to something else. And I think that's an ADHD thing. And I think it's only in the last couple of years that I've started joining the dots between some of those obsessions and passions to pull them together into one vehicle that could actually become a business and have impact. So satisfy my need for all those passions or muses, and then to create wealth from that and to have a positive impact. And it finally started falling into place in the last sort of year or two.
Yeah, nice. So
thank God.
Yeah, lessons learned, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very clear that you've got a goal, right? So you know what you want to do, and that's obviously including with your partner. But you also have sort of, I guess, you call them muses. Nice words. So outside interests, and now you're trying to form that into a career.
Yeah.
And then you talk about wealth, but wealth to you isn't going to be making loads of money. It's more about just funding that passion and funding that next.
Yeah, it's to have enough money in the bank to go shopping and not check your bank balance before you go into the supermarket.
Yeah.
Or only putting 20 quid at a time into the vehicle, or having a vehicle that you don't feel ashamed of driving. And that feels like difficult to say, because we're in the 1%. Even driving an old banger around, we're in the 1% of wealth on the planet. But if I go to a client meeting, I'll park 2 streets away, so they don't see what I'm driving, because it for me, in my mind, that doesn't fit what an architect drives.
Yeah.
And so it's just to feel comfortable enough. But extreme wealth isn't something. I think extreme wealth is freedom, right? If you have your, I guess you call it ikigai, if you're doing something that you love, then everything feels like play.
Yeah, nice.
And that's freedom, that's wealth.
True freedom, yeah. Not necessarily money.
For sure.
That's the Japanese word, right? For this great balance, which is something that I'm exploring right now, and I'm quite interested in. But it's just listening to what you're saying, it sounds like over years of working and playing and working and playing, you've started to develop and create healthy relationships outside of those things, because they all work together to be one goal, rather than just being, I'm going to be an architect, I'm going to earn hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, and then I'll retire, and then I'll do what I love. It's like, I'm going to build my life around these pillars, and that might mean that I end up earning 40 grand a year, but at least then I know I can do what I want to do, and I'm happy about it.
40 grand a year, doing what you love, and having the freedom within that to follow new passions and stuff, it is incredible. That's doable. Right? Yeah.
Those are just random numbers picked out of thin air. They're not.
But it's that's a number, right? And I think that if that's what it was, I could make that work.
Yeah.
Even though I could probably triple that.
Yeah.
In London, but then that's capped.
Yeah.
As well, obviously, but and it comes with the expense of mental health and physical health and living in the city, right? But that's the payoff.
Yeah, I don't miss black bogies.
Oh, from the Northern Line.
From any line.
From any line. Yeah. It's you wonder how much crap you breathe in, don't you, on there? I remember talking to an environmental engineer. We were designing an office building, and one of the most important things was the level of heavy metal and particulates and pollutants that sit at a certain level in London, and it's a couple of meters. So you, as quickly as you can, you need to get up onto a raised floor. So you never really want to be on the ground floor.
Right. Okay.
And it makes you wonder.
Good to know.
How bad that is.
It's not great. No.
No, it's bad.
I mean, when I lived in Jakarta, it was smoggy, and then they would have like a bank holiday on a Wednesday, which is when they had their bank holidays for whatever reason. Yeah. And it would be blue sky. It would all dissipate within a day. I mean, they would set fire to anything and everything.
Yeah.
The office guy would give him something to dispose of, and it'd be on the street burning. Whether it was plastic or not. It's it's just a little anecdote. But yeah, in regards to where you're at and sort of, I guess, the life that you've lived, because you're in a nicer position, I guess. You've got a nice reflective time to look back on as well. Where do you sort of see yourself now? Do you see yourself more contented, or like what?
I think I'm content because I finally have a clear vision.
Yeah.
Of what I see myself doing for the next, if I'm lucky, 10, 20 years or whatever, before maybe retiring. So there's contentment from that. I think once you have a clear vision of what it is that you want to do, there's an amazing equanimity that comes with that, of being able to relax. There are other issues like finance, but that's stuff you have to work on, right? And it comes that's all part of the sacrifice of the journey, isn't it? Yeah,
I think, finance is probably a unique one to entrepreneurship, I guess, rather than, saying that, leaving a job, saying to pursue something you want to do, usually is starting on that career ladder again, I guess, which is a big jump for a lot of people. So
it's the hard, that out of everything, that's the hardest thing. I don't think the late nights or 7 days a week for 12 months or whatever, that's doable.
Yeah.
And burnout, you can regroup, but it's the financial thing.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to being a man, what is it to be a man? I think it's to be able to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And I've gone through this situation, and my friend, one of my friends is as well, who's also an entrepreneur, and it's when your partner bails you out.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult to deal with. Like, I've been in positions when I was working in London and I was able to bail my partner out or help her do something or take time out to do a course or whatever. But when the shoe's on the other foot, that really, really stings.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to cope with mentally. It would be easier I think, to commit suicide than ask your partner for, can I borrow some money? I can't pay the bills. It's kind of, it feels emasculating.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one, to say the least.
Yeah. That spurs you on anyway to
Yeah, I think
as quickly as you can get to the other side of that.
I guess there's two types of men, shall we say?
Yeah.
Ones that are spurred on by it, and then the ones that sit there.
Yeah.
And wait for it to happen again. But that goes to what I'm saying, which is you've got a purpose. You've driven to something.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just, I don't fancy being an architect anymore. Just gonna sit in Stoke for a bit, see what's happening.
No, yeah, the architecture will come back for sure, and that's part of the plan. Like later on, it will come back in a more meaningful way. Because I've been trying to push environmental architecture and net zero, bio-based construction, and I think people want that, but people can't finance that.
No, not yet.
Under current mortgage structures, they want bricks and mortar, and Passive House is lobbied by the construction industry and government to be able to sell mechanical equipment and petroleum-based materials. So I think for me that will come back later as a second phase of what I'm currently doing.
Nice. So I guess thank you very much for your time today. Greatly appreciated.
Cool.
I know you're a busy man.
Yeah.
But I guess let's end again on what makes Dom a man.
What makes Dom a man? Having a quest, I guess. Looking back on that, and the confidence from my experience that I'll be able to complete that and get back to having a meaningful impact and being able to provide.
Nice.
Yeah.
And on that note, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you very much, Lewis.